Hey, greetings and blessings, everyone. My name is Brian, and I'd like to thank you for listening in. Before I get started, just since this is my first episode, basically, this is a channel that will focus on combat sports, including boxing, mixed martial arts, and professional wrestling, from a fan's point of view. My aim really is to provide my unbiased take on future and past events and everything in between. If you like my content, feel free to like, subscribe, share. Also, I definitely encourage you to comment because, hey, what's combat sports without the conversations? Now, I'm just going to jump right into it. And what better fight to kick this channel off with than Kell Brook versus Errol Spence? I mean, wow. This fight is really everything a boxing fan could hope for. Um, you have two guys in their prime putting it all on the line. And I mean, it's hosted in what I'm really starting to consider as the mecca of boxing right now. I mean, we have Vegas, and I'm partial to Vegas. Easy for me to get there. Great atmosphere, all the lights, but man, right now the UK is killing it with the boxing scene. I mean, just the atmosphere, the energy, everything that goes into it really makes it a special place to host these types of championship fights. And then you have on one hand, you have Kell Brook, who really coming into this fight and still even after this fight, top three welterweight, great champion, great skill set, great heart, always comes in shape, always gives it his all, versus the young, upcoming, rising stud in Errol Spence. I mean, the talk was big on both sides before the fight. I saw people really leaning towards both, and me myself, I was just kind of curious to how this thing was actually going to play out. Um, Neither guy was a joke, um, and I think even moving forward, neither guy. I mean, both guys really brought it. And in a fight like this, someone has to lose and someone has to win. But I mean, man, incredible. I mean, while I was watching the fight, I mean, the first 4 rounds are super close, super close. Um, Me myself, I had Errol up probably through 6, but I saw a lot of opinions out there that were really leaning towards Brook, maybe Brook possibly outboxing Errol. Me, I thought Errol was applying a lot of effective pressure. Um, the body shots that he was putting in were just connecting, and it seemed to be only a matter of time before they would take their toll. But I mean, props to Kell Brook. I mean, he came in incredible shape. I mean, you knew you were watching something special off the back. I mean, this dude. I mean, those body shots that Brook was putting on Errol Spence in the early rounds, I mean, would have slowed most fighters down, definitely before the later rounds. I mean, before rounds 8, 9, and 10. I mean, usually you would see those type of shots taking their toll probably around like round 4, round 5. So props to Brook. I mean, he was countering effectively. Um, he was using a very good jab, and he was definitely the first fighter to give Errol, I mean, some would say major problems in the ring, but even if you won't say major problems, definitely gave him problems in the ring. Created a bit of confusion for Errol. I know Errol after the fight attributed to a bit of ring rust, but I mean, Kell Brook is just that legit. He really is just that legit. As the fight started to go on, Errol started to key in on Kell Brook's left eye, which was not the eye that he had previously damaged in the Gennady Golovkin fight, but it was Brook's left eye that started to kind of give in. You could tell it was causing Kell Brook troubles, and between that eye and those body shots, we started to see the knockdowns come into place, which ultimately led to Kell Brooks' demise, which led to young Errol Spence becoming the new, I believe it was IBF welterweight champion. So I mean, man, what a fight. What a fight. Now, ringside judges all the way up until the time of the stoppage had Errol Spence. I know one judge had a little bit wider for Errol. Some of the other two judges had it on a much slimmer margin. Like I said, my take after 6 rounds was that I thought Errol was up at least 4 rounds to 2. Um, but I mean, it was just one of those fights that I did have some of the early rounds marked as what I would call swing rounds. Could have gone either way, really. I just thought Errol was just being a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more effective. Kell was definitely countering well. I just thought the pressure that Errol was putting on was really generating a pretty good points lead. But just because he was ahead on points significantly doesn't necessarily mean that the fight wasn't close. I mean, you can have cases to where someone may be up 8 rounds to 2, but I mean, it's still a close fight. It's just depending on how you saw it. And then the way that I saw it, I just thought between Errol's pressure and the body shots were definitely winning him a lot of those rounds. Um, so yeah, I mean, great fight. Now, you know, for the post fight, uh, there was a bit of discussion between or discussion going on surrounding whether or not Kell Brook quit or did he have more to offer. In these cases, it's hard to say one way or the other. I mean, because at one point, you know, these are human beings, and Kell Brook coming off the devastating eye injury he had in his previous fight. You know, who knew how much that really played into his decision or how bad his eye was really hurt or his concerns. I mean, at the end of the day, these fighters are always going to want to put on a great show, and some guys will go to a little further ends than others. But um, I don't really lean on the side to jump and say, oh, he quit or, um, he chickened out or anything like that. You know, Errol Spence is a heavy, heavy, heavy puncher. Heavy, heavy, heavy puncher. And I mean, if it wasn't for the eye, I mean, those body shots, like I said, the way they were landing, I mean, at the rate he's throwing them, I mean, man, you just don't see too many guys really committing to the body shots like that, especially a power puncher like that. And he's putting everything into those body shots. I mean, just that alone, and then you take the damage with the eye, and if he can't, and he's not be able to see that, if he can't really see out of that eye, and as the fight picked up, Kell started with a good jab, but Errol was really, really, really landing his jab in those later rounds. So I mean, you really take that into effect, and you know, it almost is what it is. I mean, going back to the crowd though, one of the one of the coolest parts about that fight was after the first knockdown, you can really hear and sense that the crowd was really, really cheering their man and really giving him a certain level of energy that was really exciting to see because personally, I thought Kell was probably done after the first knockdown. I mean, but just the enthusiasm of his hometown crowd really, really, really pushing their fighters. I mean, it was something special to see. I mean, Kell showed a lot of heart, really rallying back, and he landed some good counters on Errol. But I mean, credit to Errol. I mean, not just in his ability to absorb those punches, but I mean the shape that guy came in. It's interesting because both sides corners going into it, and even during the fight when you can kind of hear the feedback that the corners were going into, both sides were, really kind of pushing their fighter to the extent of letting them know like, hey, this guy's going to slow down. From Errol Spence's side, they felt that Kell Brook may have came in a little too heavy and had to cut too much weight, and that was going to take a toll in the later rounds. And Kell Brook's side really felt that, since Errol Spence had never really been the distance, or at least in a 12-round fight, that was going to play a toll. And props to Errol Spence, man. I mean, the guy was able to apply that pressure. He took some pretty big counter shots, and I mean, he kept going. I mean, the guy had energy, crazy energy. So, I mean, all in all, great fight, great build up. As a boxing fan, I loved every moment of it. And I love it. I love it when two top guys can get together in their peak like this and really put on a performance. As for where, you know, both guys go from here, I think for Spence, the big fight, which is a major fight, is obviously Keith Thurman. Man, man, what an interesting fight that's going to be, and when that does happen. I mean, both guys are already calling for it. Um, Keith Thurman is right now he's injured, but he said he'll be back by the end of the year. So we'll see if that fight happens then, or maybe maybe early 2018. We'll see. But wow, wow, I do think those guys after this fight, I do think those guys are one and two of the welterweight division. I think with Keith rightfully so being the number one welterweight in the world, and now Errol Spence is really becoming what most people thought he was, and that's a top two welterweight, and maybe potentially even the number one welterweight in the world right now. Um, Man, what a fight that's going to be. I mean, it's going to be so interesting too between just seeing if Errol Spence applies that same sort of pressure style to Keith Thurman, who is a really, really solid counterpuncher. I think we saw that in the Danny Garcia fight. And you know, for whatever reason, Keith doesn't necessarily seem to get all the credit he deserves because Keith can fight in many different ways, not just from a strictly moving. I mean, the guy can move forward, he can counter, he has power. I think a lot of the knock is maybe the way you know, he was really marketed to the masses when he started taking big fights, and they were really pushing him as like really one-time Thurman. He was knocking out everyone and so on and so forth. But I mean, when you're fighting top guys like that, top slick guys, which Keith Thurman is doing, I mean, he's taking on all the top names and all the top guys. I mean, you're just not going to knock everybody out on that level. I mean, the top guys in the world, they're just not going down like that. They are who they are for a reason. And I think that's what we're seeing with Keith. But man, the adjustment that guy makes from fight to fight is incredible. So I think that's what's really going to make Keith versus Errol an amazing fight. I mean, if that fight doesn't happen next, I mean, I would probably say even three other names really come to mind that I wouldn't mind seeing Errol fight even before Keith if need be. One being Danny Garcia. I think that fight stylistically makes a lot of sense. I mean, with Errol Spence being a pressure fighter the way that he is, and Danny Garcia being a really, 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 really great counterpuncher, and I mean masterful. I mean, the guy really is swift. I mean the way the guy can hang in the pocket and avoid those shots and come back with his own is almost second to none. So I mean, a fight between Errol Spence and Danny Garcia would be huge and a huge test, and really just one more maybe huge. Definitely not a warm up, but definitely one more big test before the Keith Thurman fight. Um, that would probably be my number. That would probably be the fight I want to see first. If not, I would say Sean Porter. I mean, imagine a fight between those two. Wow, wow. Those two guys coming straight at each other nonstop, doing a reckless abandon. I mean, they're definitely on good terms, but I don't really see either of those guys turning down a shot. Errol already said he's fighting whoever, and Sean Porter doesn't come across to me as anyone who's turning down any opportunities, especially when it comes for a belt. Um, so, I mean, dude, yeah, so I mean, that's another test. I mean, it's definitely different than the Danny Garcia test because I mean, you're going from a counter puncher to someone who's probably. I mean, Sean definitely has great countering skills. You don't get to be a top five welterweight in the world without having those type of skill sets. But everyone knows what Sean Porter's coming to do, and he's coming to come at you full force, all 12 rounds, and make it hard, make it dirty, make it ugly. But it's going to be a fight. So seeing those two go at it first would definitely be another interesting test. Another would be Lamont Peterson, who kind of represents something that would be in between both of those styles. So I mean, Lamont is a little bit more of a traditional boxer, to where he's really kind of giving both. He's not um, necessarily leaning too much one way or too much the other. He's right there in the middle. I think that would be a great test for Errol as well before the Keith Thurman fight, if the Keith Thurman fight isn't next. Um, for Danny Garcia, excuse me, for Kell Brook, next, I suppose he's moving up to 154 from here. I mean, honestly, he made the welterweight limit. I saw some of the buildup from the days before, and I mean, he was already at like 148, like 2 days before weigh-in or something like that. I mean, he was cutting the weight relatively easy. I understand that when you go up and you fight at like 160, like he did, it's harder on the body to come back down, and I don't necessarily know too much of what the situation is behind the scenes with that. I mean, but it seems like to me he can still make welterweight. And if he can still make welterweight, I mean, there's definitely good fights available for him at welterweight. I mean, the obvious one that comes to mind is him versus Amir Khan. I would love to see these two guys get it out the way. And well, and Amir moved up as well to take on Canelo. So I mean, maybe those guys could meet at 154 if they don't feel like cutting the weight, or at 147. I think both guys can make the weight, and I think both guys. I mean, it'd be a great fight for the UK. Can you imagine a scene in the UK for Kell Brook versus Amir Khan? Wow. Wow. Two great boxers, two great warriors. Amir Khan is definitely a warrior. Probably the fastest hands in the division, right? Probably. Yeah, I mean, talk about a great boxing match. And those guys don't like each other. They don't like each other at all. I mean, so, man, the build-up would be nuts for that. I still think it's a big fight. I saw some people saying, like, hey, some of the buzz has died down now because of that fight. I mean, for what? I mean, why? That's ridiculous. They're both great fighters. They're both probably at the top of their game still. I mean, a loss doesn't define much of anything, especially when you're taking on the best in the world. I mean, Kell Brook, for freaking crying out loud, went up to fight Gennady Golovkin, which was a huge test. He did well. He lost, but he did well. Doesn't take too much away from him. I mean, he lost Errol Spence. I mean, it is what it is. It's not the end of the world. It's not even close to being the end of the world. Amir Khan is exactly who he is. A great boxer. He puts it on the line, and he's winning by decision, or he's getting knocked out maybe. But, I mean, he's so supremely skilled. So fast. I mean, when is it not a good time to see Amir Khan fight? So, I mean, I still think it's a big fight. It's something the fans want to see. Why not? If he does move up to 154, you have the Charlo brothers out there who, I mean, they're at the top of their game. I mean, Charlo brothers are impressive. I would probably like to see Kell Brook fight Lara, or maybe even Hurd next if he moves up to 154. I think those would be good competitive fights at 154, and he can quickly see where he's at amongst the best, and those guys are the best. I mean, he can take on Charlo. Charlo right now is both of the brothers. I know one is moving up to 160 more than likely. Both of the brothers are probably at the top of the division. I mean, it's hard to say because there's a lot of talent at 154 as well. I think next for Kell Brook, I'd probably want to see him. Lara, Hurd. I'd be interested to know what you guys what you guys think as well for possible matchups at 154. If not Khan, out of all the names at 154, who would you guys probably want to see? But a lot of good boxing coming up. Like I said, if you like talks like this, please subscribe, like. Definitely want to know what you guys think. I'm all about the comments, all about the feedback. Love to have discussion with anyone. Thanks for listening. I'm out.